Hey everybody, welcome to part 2 for this week, module 2. I want to go over now the module 2 short paper. And basically this week what you're doing is you're writing a short paper and you have to include job qualifications and descriptions for state judges and federal judges. And then you have to offer an opinion on the determination as to which judge, federal or state judge, do you think has the more difficult job. And you have to base your determination as to which one has the more difficult job based on, for example, the caseload, the type of cases, the amount of public and media scrutiny that state and federal judges receive. So there's some qualifiers in there that as you prepare your paper, you need to make sure you address, all right? Also, please note that in order to get the exemplary rating, you have to include specific examples based on research. So, for example, under job qualifications for state judges, you may want to look at your home state and add a reference to that. You may say, for example, in my home state of California, in order for a judge to reach the bench, there are a couple different ways that occurs, and describe that. And then also describe what your state requires for your judges. For example, some states may require that they have a law degree from an accredited law university. Some may require that they be a practicing attorney for X amount of years. Those type of things. So make sure that, you know, if you want the exemplary rating, that you show me that you've done some additional research, and then that can be displayed in your paper. Okay, so again, take a good close look at the rubric, take a look at the critical elements that you need to address, and that's what we're gonna talk about here in just a second. So now, a job description, if you've never had to deal with one, a job description is an informative documentation. Let me disappear for a minute so you can see the screen. Is an informative documentation of the scope, duties, tasks, responsibilities, in some cases working conditions related to the job listing in an organization to the process of job analysis. So in other words, it's what does it take to do this job? Job descriptions might include details in skills and qualifications that an individual should possess in order to apply for this job. So for example, one obviously would not argue that judges should have some legal experience. In most states, it's, you know, unless you're a justice of the peace, you probably have to have at least a law degree and may have been a practicing attorney, and you may even have to have been a resident of the county in which you are seeking a particular judicial seat. All right, so that's the job description. And so I'm going to scroll through here real quick. I'm going to go past the court structure, and I'm going to go here to selection of judges. Now, we already talked about the process for federal court, so I'm not going to go into that specifically. But I will talk a little bit about state court judges. Now, state court judges are selected in a variety of ways, and it's going to depend on your state. So again, hopefully you will spend time and you will research your state and not somebody else's state, okay? Because I think it'll benefit you the most if you have a better understanding of how your state appoints judges. Now, judges can either be elected as any other political type position. In some states, it might be a partisan. In other words, it's a Republican judge versus a Democrat judge. In some states, it's nonpartisan, in which the political party of the candidate is not disclosed and is not relevant to the election. So there is the election process. Then there's the appointment process, maybe for a given number of years. So, for example, in California, members of the California Supreme Court and members of the California Court of Appeals are appointed for 12-year terms, and then every 12 years they have to seek re-election in order to retain their position on either the You're not on either the California Supreme Court or the California court, the appellate courts within California. Okay. In some states, it's an appointment for life. Previous work with students in this class, I learned that Massachusetts, for example, appoints their judges for life, very similar to the federal court system. Or in some cases, a combination of these methods, appointment followed by election. So in many states, it's going to be an appointment followed by election. In some states, as a lawyer, you can challenge a sitting judge if you wish, when that person's up for election. All right. So these are the different ways that state judges reach the bench: election, appointment for a number of years, appointment for life, or a combination of these methods. Now, in the appointment process, most states, much like the federal government, have a vetting process. In other words, you're not going to have your state governor nominate somebody who shouldn't be on the bench. So there's a vetting process in which gubernatorial staff, maybe the local bar association, evaluate potential candidates who are seeking an appointment to the bench, because normally those people apply through whatever means your state has to receive a judgeship. So there is a process in which the potential appointee is vetted, much like in the federal court system. And then the governor is given a list of potential candidates and obviously selects one. Again, so there's different methods here. Again, there's an election process where if the sitting judge is, if it's his turn to run for re-election, then he runs for re-election, and again, anyone can run against him as long as they meet the qualifications for the position. In some states, it's an appointment followed by an election, or it could be appointment for life, or a combination of these. All right, so evaluate how your state does, because I think you'll find and you'll walk away with a better perspective on what it takes to be a judge within your state. So let's look at some of the duties. Now, when we look at duties for judges, we're looking at the duties associated with things that we're familiar with. In other words, what takes place in the courtroom. But understand there's also an array of activities and duties that takes place outside the courtroom. In other words, in chambers. So in the courtroom, a judge hears allegations of the prosecuting and defending parties, listens to witnesses' testimony, rules on admissibility of evidence, informs defendants of their rights, instructs juries, questions witnesses, and rules on motions presented by counsel. Those are the typical things that we might see on TV. In chambers is where a judge spends a lot of their time when they're not out on the bench in the courtroom. A judge in chambers might be researching law and regulations, issues, opinions, and case decisions, supervises the work of law clerks and other court staff, meets with attorneys to discuss cases and encourage settlement, and establishes court rules and procedures. Some judges perform marriage ceremonies and can also issue marriage licenses, depending on how your state operates. All right. So these are things that occur sort of behind the scenes in chambers. And judges spend a significant amount of time in chambers. You know, if you walk by a courtroom and the courtroom is dark, meaning there's nothing going on, that doesn't mean nobody's working. The judge could be in the back working on a case decision, could be researching the law, to assist him in making decisions in an upcoming case, whatever the issues might be. All right. Now, the skills that the judges require are also going to be important. Judges must possess excellent logical reasoning skills, analytical and decision-making skills, the ability to analyze complex cases and understand statutory law and render sound legal decisions. Thorough knowledge of the criminal and civil procedure, jurisdictional rules and court systems, and the court system is critical. All right, when we talk about jurisdictional rules, again, jurisdictional rules, what rules apply to that specific court. Oftentimes, different courts, even within the same state, might have different filing rules, different types of rules related to things that attorneys have to file and when they have to file them by, things like that. So as a judge, you need to be familiar with local rules. We'll just call them local rules. And again, understand the court system. You need to understand the entire court structure within which you operate. You have to have top-notch writing ability as necessary to draft clear, concise, and well-reasoned opinions bench memoranda, and other legal documents. So writing is going to be essential as this part of the job. So these are basic skills, and I think these skills can be applied to both federal judges and state judges, right? They both have the courtroom activity and they both have the in-chambers activity as a means to try and, again, in chambers, there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes other than what you see judges in the courtroom. Okay, so take a look at the in-court and outside the courtroom duties of judges, and then the skills necessary. Okay, so these are the skills. So again, as you're researching for this assignment, understand that different states, again, may require for appointment that you have to have been a lawyer for so long, or you have to be a practicing attorney, you have to live within the county, which you seek a seat, an array of things. So make sure you include those as part of the overall discussion. We are very familiar with what it takes to be a federal judge based on our assignments last week. So basically, you're going to reiterate some of those in terms of some of the duties and qualifications and so forth. All right. So this will give you some ideas to, again, you can apply these to probably both federal and state court judges, unless you find something unique about your state. And just to go over the type of cases that federal judges might hear and state judges might hear, here's just a quick overview. Federal court system deals with cases that deal with constitutionality of the law, cases involving the law, so federal law. So in our case, for example, I have an asterisk here, bank robbery. Remember, bank robbery is a federal crime. And so as such, it is subject to federal jurisdiction. And that is because there is a federal statute that outlines the crime of bank robbery. And that federal statute is Title 18, Section 2113 of the United States Code. Right, let me repeat that for you, because you may want to write it down. It's Title 18, Section 2113 of the United States Code. That's what gives the federal authorities jurisdiction over bank robberies, because we have a statute in the federal code that prohibits somebody from robbing a bank, okay, that has federal deposits insured. State courts, most criminal cases, probate involving wills and estates, most contract cases, tort cases, personal injuries, for example, family law, marriage, divorce, adoptions, juvenile cases, things like that. State courts are the final arbiters of state laws and constitutions. Their interpretation of federal law or the U.S. Constitution may be appealed to the United States Supreme Court. The Supreme Court may choose to hear or not hear such cases. So, for example, if a state court makes a ruling based on the Fourth Amendment and your attorney feels that that interpretation is wrong, then obviously your attorney can file an appeal into federal court because it's dealing with the U.S. Constitution, your Fourth Amendment rights. All right. So these are the type of cases that can be heard in each of these types of courts, federal courts and state courts. And so you'll, as you are preparing your discussion board this week, when you look at your state court structure, you'll be able to see where each of these come into play and the establishment of jurisdiction for certain type of offenses within your state. Let me back up here real quick. We already talked about the duties. We've already talked about the selection of judges. And this is just an overview of federal and state courts. I will have a copy of this document available for you. I'll attach it here in this announcement. So you can take a look at this. Talks about federal court structure, state court systems, what gives them their authority. This is federal courts, obviously, you get it from the Constitution. State courts get their authority from state constitutions. And so you can take a look at all of this. I think you'll find it informative. This establishes, again, the number of circuit courts of appeals, the number of U.S. district courts, and all the other courts in the federal system. And then state courts, again, are also identified for you in your own state court systems. You can take a look at that when you do some of your research. Okay? And this talks a little bit about some of the appellate process that can take place within both the federal court system and the state court system. So I'll have this document available to you for your perusal. Okay? And I hope that helps. But if you have any questions, again, please never hesitate to contact me. You got my phone number, you got my email, you can always text Just tell me who you are. All right, guys, have a great week. I'll see you in Blackboard. Bye.